Well, hello there and welcome. This is Pro Wrestling Inside Out, and this is our look at Georgia Championship Wrestling. And yes, we have went from 1951 to 1970, January 1970. And the reason for this is the people have asked for it. And unlike all the other wrestling organizations, we will give you what you want. You have asked us to start, and we're going to start 1970, and we're going to start January 1970. And Jack, can you start us out there?
January 2nd, 1970, Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta City Auditorium. Bill Kane versus the Spoiler, Bugsy McGraw under a mask, ended without a winner as a time limit draw. Joe Scarpa defeated Chati Yokachi. The Assassins, Joe Hamilton and Tom Renesto, defeated Don Curtis and the Professional. The Torres brothers, Alberto and Ramon Torres, defeated Paul DeMarco and Buddy Colt. Homer Odell defeated Leo Garibaldi, and El Mungo defeated Nick Bockwinkel.
This card, they said, was a near sellout. January 2nd, 1970. Gilbert was actually what was that guy's name? Something Gilbert. I don't remember.
Tommy Gilbert.
Yeah.
Is that what his name was? Okay,
I believe so. Yeah.
But he was the professional, but he was billed as the mystery man to Curtis for the match against the Assassins. Odell managed Paul DeMarco and Buddy Colt. Leo Garibaldi, Eddie Smith, and Corsica Jean were credited as being the referees for this card. And now let's go to the television wrestling, Rodney.
Okay, WQXI Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, on January 3rd, 1970. Ed Caprell is the host. Georgia Television Championship on the line. Nick Bockwinkel defeated Joe Scarpa for the title. Scarpa had been the reigning Georgia Television Champion since he went against the Assassin #2 on November the 22nd, 1969 in Atlanta.
Before Jack goes on to January 9th, 1970, Joe Scarpa would end up being Chief J Strongbow for those people who don't know that. And I really didn't know Bugsy McGraw was ever the spoiler in Georgia. All right, Jack.
January 9th, 1970, a Friday night, Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta City Municipal Auditorium. The Spoiler defeated Shati, well, this is a hard one, Yokuchi. And, hey, just go with it, guys. Don't laugh. Les Wolf defeated Cyclone Soto. Bill Kane defeated Roberto Soto. Paul DeMarco and Buddy Colt went against Joe Scarpa and El Mongo, which ended without a winner as a time limit draw. The NWA Tag Team Titles match was the Assassins defeating the Torres brothers, Alberto and Ramon. The NWA Georgia Heavyweight title match, Nick Bockwinkel defeated the Professional, the champion, by disqualification. During the match, Scarpa charged the ring and attacked Bockwinkel, bringing the match to an end.
You know, I'm gathering on the television show, Nick Bockwinkel did something really nasty to win the title. Is this probably the time that Nick Bockwinkel actually turned? Because I think he had been a babyface all up to this point, everywhere he went.
Could have been.
Not for sure, but for whatever reason, Joe Scarpa a little bit upset on this particular night. All right, Rodney.
Okay, on Saturday, January 10th, back at the TV studios in Atlanta, it's El Mongo defeating Vincent Lopez. The Torres brothers defeated the Assassins. This is on television. And then Les Wolf defeated Chati Yakachi.
I believe that's a rib. Anyway, January 16th, 1970, back in Atlanta at the Municipal Auditorium, Buddy Colt defeated Cyclone Soto in 11 minutes. Les Wolf defeated the Spoiler in 9 minutes. Ramon Torres defeated Bill Kane in 11 minutes. Ray Gunkel and Buddy Fuller defeated Blue Demons 1 and 2 in 3 minutes. Took longer to get to the ring. Joe Scarpa, El Mongo, and the Eliminator defeated Nick Bockwinkel and the Assassins in 20 minutes, and the NWA Heavyweight title was defended when Dory Funk Jr., the champion, defeated Paul DeMarco by disqualification.
The Blue Demons were two guys. I did not really know who they were. One of them was from Peru. One of them was from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I'm not for sure who they were. I couldn't even. I'll be honest with you, like that Chada Waka Waka. I could not pronounce their names. I don't understand what happened here with Gilbert. He was the eliminator during this night. Now, why he went from the professional to the eliminator under a mask, I don't know. I could not find any information of why he did so. All right, Rod.
Probably Joe Scarpa's idea.
He might have been working multiple towns. They might have. Anyway, Saturday, January the 17th, back at the TV studios in Atlanta. Nick Bockwinkel defeated Bob Nandor. It's Assassin number 1 versus Les Wolf. Time limit draw on that one. Alberto Torres versus Bill Kane.
They say winner unknown, but I'm pretty sure Alberto won that match.
Friday, January 23rd, 1970, Atlanta City Auditorium. Les Wolf defeated Bill Kane. Bobo Johnson defeated Billy the Kid in a little person's match. Paul DeMarco and Buddy Colt defeated Bob Nandor and El Mongo. A one-night tournament for $1,000 also took place, featuring 3 teams. The Torres brothers defeated Shati Imakochi and, here we go, Yasa, Fuji.
Mr. Fuji.
There you go. To advance in the tournament. The Assassins defeated the Torres brothers. The Assassins defeated Shate and Fuji. See what I did there? NWA Georgia Heavyweight Title match. Nick Bockwinkel versus the professional who was the champion ended without a winner as a time limit draw.
All right. Back on Saturday, January 24th, 1970, back at the studios in Atlanta. Jim Wilson, the brilliant Jim Wilson versus Vincent Lopez. It's Paul DeMarco versus Les Wolf. Buddy Colt defeated Salvador Dominguez.
Poor Jim always held back. I think somebody was holding his leg. Anyway, Friday, January 30th, 1970, Atlanta City Auditorium. Buddy Colt defeated Les Wolf. The Torres brothers defeated Bill Kane and Vincent Lopez. Joe Scarpa and El Mongo defeated Shati and Fuji. Nick Bockwinkel defeated the Spoiler. Ray Gunkel and Buddy Fuller defeated Assassins 1 and 2. And for the NWA Heavyweight Title match, Dory Funk, the champion, defeated Paul DeMarco. And I guess they must have done, I'll read that in a second. Dory Funk Jr. also defeated Homer Odell. For the Funk Jr. Odell match to take place, Funk had to defeat DeMarco. DeMarco left the ring following his loss to Funk, which was caused when Odell interfered, angering DeMarco for ending his chance at Funk's title, leaving Odell to fend for himself. Gunkel, Fuller, and the Assassins match would be the final appearance of Gunkel and Fuller as a team, as they wanted to focus on singles competition.
Plus the fact I don't think they got along.
Yeah, I've heard that. Imagine not being able to get on with a Fuller.
Rodney?
All right, we're back on television on Saturday, January 30th, 1970. It's Buddy Fuller defeating Bill Kane. The Georgia Television Championship on the line. Joe Scarpa versus Nick Bockwinkel, who's the champion. And, of course, that was a time limit draw in that one. Assassin 2 versus El Mongo. And a time limit draw on that. A lot of time limit draws. But it was very I wanted you to know and to note something from the previous. The world heavyweight champion not only went over once, but he went over twice.
Yes.
Unheard of. Absolutely unheard
of. This was a good time in Georgia. February will come up, and the Assassins and Paul DeMarco are going to be intertwined. And we'll find out why on the February 1970 his return to Georgia Championship Wrestling. The booker during this time, Leo Garibaldi. He was the booker for Georgia Championship Wrestling. The assistants, I believe, at this time was Tom Ernesto and Jody Hamilton, because back in those days, and this is the reason we've talked about 1970s and why it was so good, because at that time, Leo Garibaldi was leaving to go book somewhere else. So he was getting ready to turn over the head booking job to Tom Ernesto. And Jody Hamilton was going to be the assistant. Back in the days when that needed to happen because the wrestler was there. He knew what was going on and just didn't change things up, because soon Leo's gone. Ernesto and Jody Hamilton are the lead bookers. If you enjoyed this video,
quick before we switch off to that, something else. Doug Gilbert.
Doug Gilbert, yes, yeah. Doug Gilbert, yes. That's what I didn't think his name was Tommy. Doug Gilbert. Kind of some crazy stuff that went on with him, because he would wrestle as Doug Gilbert sometimes. You wrestle professional sometimes. You wrestle as Eliminator sometimes. I don't know. Maybe that's where Jerry Stubbs ended up with his deal, where he could be Jerry Stubbs, Mr. Olympia, and all these personalities that he had, because Doug Gilbert did it a lot. If you enjoyed this video, give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. And go one step further. Hit that notification bell. I'll tell you more when we come back on February 1970 for Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Now, at the same time, they're still doing a TV in Columbus and Macon, and then they're also doing that. That was at Channel 11, right?
And I believe they were doing one in Savannah.
And what about, were they doing any TV at the time at the Sports Arena? Because I know they did a TV taping. I believe it was on Tuesday mornings at the Sports Arena.
I think they were. I think they were at the time, but I don't think they did any time during January. Now, maybe the because I didn't find anything. I did find stuff beforehand. I found stuff in the 50s and the 60s, but for some reason, once you hit the 70s, and we know they had it in the 70s because we went there.
Yes.
We were there. We went to the shows, and great atmosphere at that Sports Arena, even though they said that place was could have been had some ghost stuff in it.
Yeah, it haunted. It was haunted. Yeah,
it was haunted. That's what they said. And I don't know. That's just what people said. We never got to go there to hear that, because the offices were there when we first went there. That was the offices. It was at the Sports Arena at was it 10th Street or something?
I
don't remember.
Yeah, but Richard Hood said it was on Custer Avenue.
Custer Avenue. Just a tremendous building for wrestling. It was we went there when it was completely empty, and it was kind of scary in there when it was completely empty. The ring was still there, because that's when they lost the Sports Arena, they quit training people.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the reason a lot of people hear about Harley Race, and Harley Race was there, but that was during the time Harley Race was booking Georgia. That's the reason Harley Race was there and didn't hurt these people that he hurt. Harley loved to hurt people. I just think it was just
it was that mentality of they wanted you to prove yourself.
Yeah, I think Randy Alls might have got beat up by Harley Race, maybe even, which is Randy Rhodes, maybe even Ole and Gene for that instance, I think. But he kept on coming back, and we know what where Randy Rhodes ended up. Really a well-respected person in the business. When you got in the business back then, you were well respected because you took your butt kickings and you kept on coming back for more. And that's not happening today. All right, let's get to the nitty gritty of what's going on today in professional wrestling.
If you don't mind, let's go ahead and listen from the insiders. They have a lot about what we were just got through talking about.
All right, so let's Richard Hood. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to you. Let's see. Dandra, Sam Washington, exactly. Wait a minute. I think I went all the way down to the bottom.
Shot down.
Let me get okay. Good evening from Richard Hood. Let's see. Mickey Mayfield. It's time. Be there. That was way before Freddie Miller and way before Gordon Solie. When we talked about this on Facebook, people talked about Gordon Solie, but Gordon Solie did not arrive in Atlanta until 1974, I don't think. Maybe 1973, but he wasn't there until they split. And that might have been around 1972, 73. But by this, Ed Capral, which was a tremendous announcer, by the way. tremendous announcer for wrestling, and so he was just as good as Gordon for that area because people loved him. Hey everyone from Hayso. Hey, yeah, Kevin Penland said Doug Gilbert. Yes, I knew it was a Gilbert. I just didn't remember what you wanted. El Mongo, top star, big star in Atlanta, the 1970s, 1960s. I think his son is one of our Facebook friends, and he could probably come on and tell us some good stories if we could ever get anybody on here.
Yeah, Raul was a super nice guy. I haven't heard from him in a good while, though.
All right, here we go. Don Hester. Hello, all. It's great to be in the 1970s. Let's have some fun. I had over 200 messages that wanted us to go to 1970s Georgia wrestling, so we did it. Richard Hood talked about Rock Hunter. I think he comes in. Now, he was there prior. He was there in the 60s, I believe. And I think he comes back sometime in the 70s. George Lambert did say Doug Gilbert. Yes, it was Doug Gilbert. 7 months before he was hatched is what happened. Let's see. Didn't one of the Torres brothers died after wrestling Ox Baker? As Ole would say, he just bored him to death. I don't know. I've never heard of that. I think he did. I think a couple of people died after they went against Ox Baker. I don't think he had anything to do with it. Maybe they did. Maybe they had to work that hard.
Just overexertion from having to work a whole match by yourself.
That's exactly right.
You know, Ox wasn't too bad, though. You go back and watch some videos in the 60s and stuff. Ox was good. It was just as he was getting a little up in age by the time the 70s was coming along.
It was almost like
I was on cards with Ox in 1985, and he wasn't getting around too good then. But, man, you talk about one of the nicest guys you would ever meet.
Love to sing.
Yes. And paint his toenails. There's a whole story there in itself.
You know, I always liked old Ox Baker. Every time we met him, he was a very nice guy. Very low. Well, he was always a very low-key guy until he started wanting to sing some songs. Then, boy, he could belt them out. He had that voice. I didn't say he was good. He could just belt them. Mickey Mayfield. When was the plane crash that broke Ric Flair's back? It was 1974, wasn't it? It was 1974. It could have been 73, but I believe it's right when he comes to the Carolinas. Flair gets to the Carolinas. I mean, he's there too much before he gets there. So, could you imagine an established team with Bockwinkel and Hamilton? Oh, you know, Nick Bockwinkel was so, but he was a second generation wrestler. I think his dad was Warren Bockwinkel, right?
Yeah.
And so was Leo Garibaldi. A lot of people don't realize, but Leo Garibaldi was a second generation wrestler, teamed up with his dad, Gino Garibaldi. They say Leo was one of the best bookers. Now, prior to coming to Atlanta, he was a booker in Texas. And two of the towns did really well, but the one they wanted to draw wasn't drawing. And so they just say, well, I think you would be best to be in a smaller territory that you didn't have to travel so far. And so he comes to Atlanta and becomes an instant success in Georgia because the trips were very, very, very small. You know, that I think maybe the furthest trip they had was Savannah, Georgia back then.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, he was just a genius. And he does come back, even though people they go through all the bookers in Georgia. There is a time that Leo Garibaldi is back around 1973. He is back there booking. But no one talks about him being there in 1973, but he does return there because he's there when Wrestling 2 is invented. Even though Jerry Jarrett said he was there, Leo Garibaldi was the one that did that. Now, I'm not saying that Jerry Jarrett wasn't there at the time. He could have been there. He could have been there as the transition between Leo Garibaldi but I think it was Leo Garibaldi to Bill Watts, and then Bill Watts to Jerry Jarrett. Who knows? Who knows these stories? Don Hester said, hello, Richard. And Mickey Mayfield said there probably wasn't one leg slap that entire year.
No, Terry Taylor had not started at that point.
That is correct.
Let's give credit where credit is.
You think that Terry Taylor should be asking for funds from all these wrestlers today? that intellectual
Oh, I
property.
guarantee if they had to pay for it, they wouldn't be doing it. Cheapest bunch of millionaires I ever seen in my life.
Richard Hood, Ed Capral. See, back in the day, in the wrestling territory days, they went and spent it all that night, so they didn't have nothing. They were having fun from night to night. Now these guys just get out there and play video games. Richard Hood, Sterling Brewer, and in Birmingham, Alabama, tremendous announcer.
Richard said that Sterling came to Atlanta a few times and did the commentary.
Yeah,
as well.
I think I did hear about him doing that. You know, Jim Carlisle was not the original person in the 1970s. A guy named Jim Kroger, Koger, was the announcer, the host of the program in Columbus at the time. But doing the research for 1970, I saw that. Charles Alford. If I see another leg slap from I'm going to pull. Richard Hood went to a show in Atlanta, big barbecue extravaganza, big wrestling show for Nick Patrick and Deep South Wrestling. He said it was pretty good. He sent me a picture that he took with Nick Patrick.
Did he?
Joe Hamilton Jr. or whatever he calls himself these days.
Did Richard count the leg slaps on that show?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him. Richard, how many leg slaps was in that show? Let us know. Nick don't watch the show, so you'll be all right. Dandra, Sam Washington. Didn't Tim Woods go under both at one point? Yes, he did. Yes, I don't know. He did the same thing. I don't. That's what got Wrestling 2 over. I think that was really what got him over because he went in there and got mad at Tim Woods for taking his mask off. Saying the mask didn't mean nothing to him. And I think ultimately that's what it got Wrestling 2 over, big time. Hasso, leg slaps is reason number 121. Why I haven't been a full-time fan since 89. Do they really think people believe? Jack, I had to ask you because you worked with these wrestlers, the new wrestlers more than we have. Do they believe by doing so that the fans really think that they've just knocked the guy's head off?
No, I don't think so because 90% of them miss. I mean, honestly, I've not seen a good super kick since Scott Armstrong.
Chris Adams had a great because I think he might have been the first person I ever saw do the super kick.
Could be, yeah.
I
only saw him on TV, so I'm just talking about in person.
Yeah, Scott did a good super kick.
Never and knew how to do it without taking your head off. Thank goodness, because I got a lot of them.
The Sports Arena on Custer Avenue, Richard Hood. Richard Hood said they also went to Ponce de Leon Park, which Buddy Fuller, Mario Galanto packed the places in back in those days. Let's see. Scott Burke, I think that's how you say that last name, Burke, didn't know Buck was going to spend so much time down south. Solomon A.W. amongst the 70s. Yes, they pushed him big time.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. He was the Georgia heavyweight champion for, many, maybe a year, actually. They pushed him big time in Atlanta. How many towns was Fred Ward allowed to promote? It's amazing because in the 1950s, Fred Ward was the promoter of Marietta, Georgia. In the 1950s, he also had other towns in the area that you wouldn't think that he would be the promoter of, but he was. Now, why by the 1970s? Why he was not the promoter in Marietta anymore? I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Maybe somebody that was there at the time could say, well, why did Fred Ward only go to Columbus, Macon, and Albany? Why did he lose Marietta? But he did lose it at some point. And it could just been, hey, I'm going to spend more time in. I'm going to open Albany up. Somebody else going to have Marietta. I mean, that could have happened. I mean, I don't really know, but he did promote on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And sometimes he would get a show when they lost the Atlanta City Auditorium. He'd get a show on Friday night, spot show or something. So he did run at least 3 days a week.
And he would occasionally run Columbus on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. So tremendous. I always loved their TV there. I liked the TV there better than I liked Atlanta. Hey guys and everyone from Rick Brooks. Ray Gunkel was the one. Yeah, now Ray Gunkel, yes, he did die after he worked against Oxbaker, but I don't think that. I don't know that that had anything to do with it. I really believe that Ray Gunkel was in the process of going to do what Ann was doing anyway. I think she just took over where he left off. I think he wasn't getting along with Buddy Fuller. I don't think prior to that he had gotten along with Lester Welch because I think Buddy and Lester they switched territories. I think Lester ended up in Florida, and Buddy ended up because he thought he could work better with Ray Gunkel. Well, he found out he couldn't even work with Ray Gunkel. So I believe in that instance. I think he had a lot on him because he knew what he was going to do, and which they did Ann wrong. Come on, let's be honest, they did it wrong
completely.
I believe the Flair crash was 1975. Okay. Didn't Harley beat both Funks for the title at one point?
Yes. Yeah, Harley beat Dory Funk. Kansas City, I believe it was, and then Toronto, I believe, was for where he beat Terry Funk. There's the old sports arena right there. And it said 310 Chester Avenue, I believe. It's what the official mailing address was. It's as you saw, it has wrestling right on the front.
That's the way we remember it. But I don't remember there being
look at that train track going right beside of it, isn't it?
I remember going through that door though. That side door right there. There's the offices was right through that where it says wrestling. The offices was right there. Just great memories of that place. That was great memories of that. Let's see. Vern Gagne. Did Vern Gagne ever wrestle in Georgia? Yes, he did. He did wrestle in Georgia. Or yet the South before the NWA Jarrett merger. Yes. Vern did not. I don't think he did when he took over that territory. I'm not for sure. But he is on cards in Georgia in 1950. 1955, 1954. He is on cards in Georgia. Jeremy Richter. Was Terry first at the leg slap or Chris Adams? Did Chris Adams do the leg slap?
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he knew how to do it.
He was a whole lot better than Terry Taylor at it.
Yeah.
Terry Taylor started in 1980. Yes, and that's when the wrestling business was on its way down. By the 1980s, if the National Wrestling Alliance would stay the course, and what happened was, I truly believe the younger promoters that got in the 1979, 1978, but 1980, they did not know what the people prior to them knew. They just left something out when they were teaching them. And I don't know what it is, but they left something out. The Fullers were never as good as their grandfather. They just wasn't. They wasn't even as good as Buddy Fuller was. They just didn't have that abilities that those guys, Roy Welch had. Roy Welch was a genius. He was an absolute genius. But they just didn't have that same deal. Jim Crockett Jr. didn't have what Jim Crockett Sr. had. He didn't have that. They left something out on these people. Sam Muchnick, even Bob Goggle was not what Sam Muchnick was. He just wasn't.
It seems to me that those who were was basically handed to them did not see the value of continue to cultivate their markets they were already in. They were always looking over the boundaries, over the borders somewhere else.
Yeah.
They were not interested really in taking care of their towns. They were looking at trying to expand to other areas, what it seemed to me.
I just think that when you look at the National Wrestling Alliance and the reason it was put together, they just stopped doing that. You think about Atlanta. You think about the bookers that went through in 1980, 81, 82, 83. Think about the bookers that went through there. They brought Robert Fuller in. He should have been working there for 3 months before he became the booker. So he knew what the territory was, what the talent had, what was going on, watch tapes. So he didn't just go in there and not know what was going on because he didn't know what was happening. Louis Tilley almost came in and did the same exact angles that had just been done in 1979. prior to that, he came back and almost did the same exact thing. Louis Tillett was booking Georgia before Leo Garibaldi came in to book it. And I think Leo Garibaldi came in like 1967, 1968. Louis Tillett was booking there, and I think business was down, which, Well,
it's when you're advertising Ed Strangler Lewis to be on the card, and he don't show up. That pretty much kills your town.
Oh man!
He had already had passed away since then, but went ahead and advertised him anyway.
Ox Baker. Hey, I didn't even really realize that Leo Garibaldi was still around in 2004. I didn't really realize that because he had been wrestling in the 50s. So, Ox Baker got out of character when he was a contestant on The Price is Right with Bob Barker. Seemed like a nice guy, Don Hester. Yes,
and Bob knew him as Ox as well.
Yes, he did.
Because, he had his name tag. What was his name? Gordon? Was it Gordon? I don't remember his name. That was on the name tag. But then he had Ox Baker, and he called him Ox to the entire show. So Bob actually knew him as Ox Baker, in my opinion.
Right on RH. Not for sure what to do. Richard Hood, guys, I didn't see any leg slaps.
Oh,
good deal.
Good. All right, Jeremy James, what's causing all this? How many names does Old Mako have? Is he in there? I think he's under some kind of protection.
He's probably been blocked off of YouTube and has to change his name. He's probably posted some stuff and shouldn't have,
Ever seen Warp Your Head Off? Oh, yes, I have. People talk bad about Jim Hess, but Jim Hess, for the area, people knew who he was. And they can say whatever they want to. Kazana drew a ton of money in Knoxville. A ton of money. I know you hear other stories from other people that say, no, yes, drew a lot of money. Our father used to go there, which he did not particularly like to go to Knoxville. He'd rather have worked the area closer to him. But it was because Kazana was there for a long time, drew a lot of money there. And Jim Hess was just that guy because he was a local personality that people knew. So he gave a little credibility to the product. And I'm not.
He was a character on the show as well. Let's be honest. He was a big character.
And Harry Thornton was as well. It was just a completely different kind of deal. Let's see. Let's go to Mickey Mayfield here. I remember Bockwinkel came to Atlanta as AWA champion and feuded with Mr. Wrestling 2, and his big insult was about 2 wearing white socks. It sold out. Oh, Dad told us, he said, we didn't, we thought, well, man, this, I don't know how well this is going to draw. And then when Nick Bockwinkel came out and said those words, basically, I guess Wrestling 2 said, well, this white sock guy will whip your tail down at Atlanta.
That was beautifully built. Absolutely beautiful built. That's when Bockwinkel was practicing, he was demonstrating the figure 4 with Gordon in the ring. And Heenan was in the ring, and that's when 2 came in, and he hit Bockwinkel, Heenan, and then nailed Gordon in the corner while he was at it. And you remember that? That was pretty good.
Yeah, I wish there were video of that.
Freddie Miller finished the show, and then the next week on TV, 2, and Gordon was standing there. And he said, "I have to apologize for that." And he said, "Well, I realized you were in the heat, Gordon. In the heat of the moment." And he said, "Well, I was just hitting everything that we moved."
Now, Richard Hood said that I had that opposite. He said when they did a split in 72, Buddy Fuller, so he shared to Lester Welch. So I guess he thought he could take care of the war. And really, the war was not settled till Jim Barnett got there. And you know how Jim Barnett settled it? Well, here's some money, and oh, but you're going to give me that much money? Well, it was a lot of money for 1970.
Those checks.
I think she got checks for a long period of time. I think she got checks up to 1980 from Georgia Championship Wrestling. So I don't know why they didn't think of that. Yeah.
Well, they just quite frankly didn't want her to have anything.
Yeah, and that was bad because she deserved it. Ray Gunkel had put his time into Atlanta, and deserved it, no matter if they got along with him or not. Ox Becker was in the movie Escape from New York. I'll have to see that. I didn't know he was in that. Jimmy James said that Mako basically, he said, computer went down and I've forgotten my passwords to sign into my account. And he said, and boom, Champagne Jimmy James is on the scene. I'm wearing a mask. Lester Welch didn't get along with Ann Gunkel. I don't know that. I don't know that they got along with anybody when it comes right down to it. You know, they always was in a feud with somebody, and you have to ask, if they're in the feud with somebody constantly, is it the other people or is it you? You have to ask that question, because if you look at the history of that family, they constantly have somebody mad at them. So at some point down the line, somebody's mad at them.
Yeah, especially when you view those people that they were into it with, and those people were not known to getting into it with anybody else. So.
This is true.
Well, you have to admit, though, when it comes to wrestling, the Welches did tremendous business.
Oh.
Buddy Fuller was the king of building territories, building towns. He knew exactly how to build a town.
Yep.
He would come in and bring some of the better, he had his crew. He would bring him in, come in and build the town, something that a lot of people don't know how to do. But he would build a town and then he would sell it. He was the king of it. He sold more territories than anybody we'd ever seen. And Dad always sing the praises of Buddy Fuller, of a guy that knew how to build a town, build a territory, and of course he sold them and made a lot of money.
And very smart. That's what I said. When you look at Roy Welch and then you look at Buddy Welch, Buddy Fuller, those two were very brilliant in their design and how they designed the wrestling business. That just for some reason didn't get to the other generation. For some reason, they did good for a very short period of time, but not as long as Roy Welch, not as long as Buddy Fuller did in the wrestling business. Maybe 8 years, 7 years, they had success. I mean, territories were changing, the business was changing, and maybe they just didn't know how to change with it. But it just seemed like even the early 80s, I think the younger promoters was the downfall. Well, it definitely was the downfall of the National Wrestling Alliance. They did not want to work with each other. I don't think they wanted to give them that percentage.
Yeah.
Bruiser Brody was supposed to be an Escape from New York, but the Puerto Rico thing happened, so Ox got the job. When you talk, I want to talk a little bit about the booking. Back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, Booker got 2.5% of the gate. So if you look at Leo Garibaldi, he would probably in the 1960s, early 1970s, he was probably making about $1,500 a week. What great money that was back in those days. I would be happy making $1,500 a week now. So
make the double payout. They made whatever they made working the show, and then they made their booking fee as well.
Yeah, and Leo he actually refereed the matches, which was probably good for the company because he could say, okay, this is not working, so change it up in the ring. And Leo had been wrestling since the 1950s. So by 1968, he was a seasoned guy. It's just incredible stuff. Mr. Hood, was this the cause of Gunkel's splitting up with Paul Simon? Oh, that's right. Was with Nick Goulas, she made $1,500 a week. I doubt Nick Goulas. No, I doubt he did. I don't think Leo Garibaldi ever worked for Nick Goulas to my knowledge. I know he went to Mobile and booked. So he did book for the Fields for a little bit, and he went to the Carolinas and was a booker in the Carolinas for a while. But yeah,
and he came back with 80s through the Robert Fullers and all the rest, Bob Armstrongs and whoever else was there at the time, George Scott's. He also came in, and Ole had to let him go within weeks because he had, from what Ole said, that he wanted to bring him in. He wanted him to stand up to the guys, lay out stuff, stick to it. He just wouldn't at that time. He said that it wasn't the same guy that he worked with before. He just didn't want to argue with anybody.
Back in the 1970s, when Ole and Gene came to Atlanta, Leo Garibaldi was the booker. and Ole argued about a finish. And Leo Garibaldi told him, no, do the finish the way I'm telling you to do it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Just do what I ask you to do. And he did it, and he found out that Leo knew what he was talking about. So
Yeah, it was Ole and Gene, and this is unheard of in today's wrestling business. Just to be honest, Ole and Gene was going to beat 1 and 2 right in the middle of the ring. I mean, it was not even no controversy, nothing. This is what Leo said. This is the way I want the match to be done. He said, this is the way I want it. Do it the way I say. He said, we'll draw money. And Leo was right. Ole and Gene went in there and I mean, beat 1 and 2 right in the middle of the ring. And then weeks later, selling out everywhere they went. And it was the point, maybe Leo felt that Ole and Gene had to have that type of win to make them a top contender, make them a top draw in Georgia. And you know, lots of times he had the vision. He certainly had the vision in that point.
And I think that you know, Leo got hurt, and when he got hurt back in the 50s and became started becoming a booker and a promoter, some great things happened in professional wrestling at the time. All right, let's talk about this really quick. Let's talk about the current wrestling organizations. AEW, Jack, I believe they went from like 800,000 to 900,000 to like somewhere around the 500,000 in 1 week. Do you have those numbers?
I do. Collision on their second week dropped all the way to 595,000. Dynamite did 902,000, still a ways away from that million mark. Speaking of the million mark, Raw did a 1.9 last night. SmackDown was down, and still drew 2.354. I wish I could be that down.
Why is AEW? What happened on Collision that went from 800 and some odd thousand to 500? What happened? Why did it lose over 300,000 fans?
I really hadn't even looked at the results that I can remember, but I think you've just got an oversaturation of something that a product in general, a product that is just not turning the numbers from a Wednesday night or a Friday night to really be competition to WWE. And I think that's what they concentrate on, is wanting to be competition to WWE, when they should do just like Vince does and ignore everybody out there, and let's just build our stuff, our brand, our people, you know, make them stars in their own right, and stop talking about them. I mean, AEW has more mentions of WWE, especially from Tony Khan and his rants, than WWE could pay for advertising.
Wow.
Anything going on, Rodney, in the world of the World Wrestling Entertainment?
Well, Daniel Bryanson is now on the injured list. He had hurt his forearm, so he's going to be out from 6 to 8 weeks. So he will be able to help Tony put together the show more, because now Tony has now decided that he was going to let artificial intelligence put together the Dynamite show. How that turned out, not quite sure. But anytime you put the word intelligence and AEW together, it just don't quite mix to me. So yeah, he was going to do that. The other thing is that I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit suspicious of all the constant bickering behind in AEW locker room. Everybody's upset. It's what I keep hearing. And then later on, no, there's nobody upset. There's nobody upset. The bottom line is that they're going to do the angle between Punk and the Elite. It's coming. Why delay it? That's what people actually tuned in for Saturday night to see. That whole thing blow up. They didn't see it. They delayed it for whatever reason. I really and truly doubt there's any heat between CM Punk and anybody there, to be honest with you. I think this was a work from the very beginning, because he was hurt and he had to go through, to recoup from the injury. And so now it's constant garbage of hearing about this behind the scenes nonsense every single week. Oh, everybody's upset, or no, they're not upset. Bottom line is that you've already extinguished. You've tried to. You've got to promote. Got all the publicity you can out of that. It's time to move on and time to look at your product, obviously. That's my take on that. But it's kind of every week, and now everybody's upset with Vince McMahon. Everybody's upset in his dressing room. Their dressing rooms are. Everybody's got their panties in a wad, and that's the men. Also, the women occasionally. But everybody's upset. If you notice, every locker room's upset. All the wrestlers are upset. But let me tell you a little secret. The wrestlers are never happy. It doesn't matter how much money they make or what they do. Wrestlers are never happy. Ever.
But it's in any business, I would say most people are not happy. It's just not wrestling business. It's all businesses. I mean, even if you got your dream job, and let's think about it. CM Punk got his dream job. He worked all those years to get to the WWF. And then when he got there, he didn't want to be there no more. And that's, and I understand, because when you're doing it because for the love of it, there's a difference between once you get there and you're doing it for the money of it. It's a completely different, but the problem was they didn't understand the wrestling business, because the independent wrestling groups kind of let you do what you wanted to do. When you went to an actual wrestling company, they told you what to do, and they wasn't used to that. That's the reason the territory system worked out so well, because if Jack worked in, let's say he worked in Memphis, well, he knew what Memphis is going to run the same exact way that Georgia was going to run. When he got there, they're going to tell him exactly what he's going to do. At least in the 1970s. 1980s could be different.
Well, they had so many talented people, though, at the time. They understood completely the wrestling business, knew exactly what they had to do to draw a house, and it was weekly. Most towns were weekly back then, the ones that we were used to, Birmingham, Dothan, Atlanta, all Columbus, Macon. They were all weekly. So you had to innovate every week. You couldn't do the same exact thing every single week. Then the other thing is I've about had enough of is LaKnight. Okay. LaKnight. This is his big opportunity. Some people might know him as LA Knight, but no, there's no periods there. So it's LaKnight. Okay. So LaKnight, it's his big time. Here's his big chance. What in the world are you talking about? Is his big chance. This is his big opportunity. This is something for WWE to really make something big of him. Well, he's on TV, people. What else do you want? What else do you want? Not everybody can be the world champion. Not everybody can have a belt.
They are working on that. They already have 3 world champions.
I noticed Austin Theory has not been on the show here lately. I'm not sure what's going on there.
He probably got hurt.
He's probably right. Or anyway,
Creative doesn't have anything for him.
It's possible. Well, I heard that and they have been doing the exact same thing with him for months. They really have been doing the exact same thing for months. And then Eric Bischoff did not. He's not buying the Jungle Boy. His turn. He's just not buying it.
Oh, see, they turned him.
Apparently, they did. Yes.
He had no personality, so they turned him.
Yes.
So he could even have a less of a personality.
Oh, I'm sure he's going to go and he's going to do the spoiled rich Hollywood kid gimmick now. I think they're going to drop the Jungle Boy. He's going to go by his name.
That was there was the original Jungle Boy.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, back in the 1950s, there was a guy named the Jungle Boy that wrestled in the 1950s.
Well, did he turn on his partner and decided that he's going to do the Hollywood kid?
Well, that was back when they really tried to make wrestling look real. Back in those days when they tried to make it look real. Today, they don't even try.
Now, was this Jungle Boy raised by wolves by any chance?
The Jungle Boy looked like a Jungle Boy too. He didn't look like this guy today. This guy, what's up? What was the guy's name? Pepe. He was a man. I never can get his name right. I'll have to figure it out. I'll throw a picture up there. But it seemed like it was him that he worked as the Jungle Boy.
Also, everybody else upset because WWE would not announce what city they were in for SmackDown. It was big news. They just put down Cajun Door, Louisiana. Cajun Dome, yes. They wouldn't name what city they were in. Maybe they didn't realize what city they were in. They didn't say Lafayette. Maybe they thought it was Lafayette. Maybe they had an argument with the arena and just finally said, okay, we're just going to call you the Cajun Dome and be done with it.
This is not the first time they did this. This is pretty regular practice. And what, if I remember correctly, when it first started happening, it was because somebody in the WWE office didn't want it to look like they were going to smaller markets.
Hey, Hasso said, going back to last week's conversation, he said the birds and the conclusion of the 4 flat tire angle did remind me of my first bouncing off the walls family. Great storytelling. Yep. Great storytelling, especially the way they did it. When Michael A. said, come out here and make some excuse for having 4 flat tires. What the way Austin Idol did that was so good. That it was, it was superb how Austin Idol did that. And I don't say good things about Austin Idol most of the time, but he was good. There was a time Austin Idol was really good.
And I think that was kind of end of that period because y'all know that, for those certain years there, I was a huge Austin Idol fan, because I thought some of the best storylines, the best stuff he had ever done was during that time frame of the late 70s, early 80s.
Let's see here.
Jack, it seems, and I haven't read anything about it, but it seems like they have basically erased all of the NXT champions, or in the process of erasing NXT. Have you heard any news about them eliminating or maybe changing the name or something? Because it seems like they are
trying a new strategy, and I'm sure this comes direct from Vince. But they're cutting down on the overall number of championships so that the champions can go to every show. And I think NXT is going to be that plug between SmackDown and Raw so that Raw champions can go to NXT, SmackDown can go to NXT. And I guess if they wanted to intermingle those folks at that show, they can. But whatever they do, God bless him. He was a heck of a wrestler, but Shawn Michaels is not a chip off the old Triple H block.
Mickey Mayfield said, when is the Iron Man match between Jack Lord versus Mike Jackson with special referee Jerry Oates?
Soon as the money is raised for my hospital bill. And besides that, Mike won't wrestle me because he got mad at me because I jerked him off the top rope.
Was he walking the top rope?
Walking the top rope. I gave him
with your hand.
I gave him 2 sides, and then when he was going for the third, I thought, no, I'm done looking.
And you were right. You were right to do it, sir. You were right to do that.
But he never again wrestled me after that. But now he booked me, but he never did wrestle me again.
Victor Nash, have no fear, the great one is here. Hope all is well from him. Richard Hood said Thunderbolt came in for Ann Gunkel in 1974. Let's see. WWE has too many guys with 2 belts right now. I don't watch the new product, so.
Well, and then this past week they unified the NXT women's tag team titles with the WWE. So now they're down to 1 women's tag team champions now.
Mickey Mayfield, one of the reasons AEW is floundering is pushing people like MJF and the constant run-ins almost every match.
Oh, wow. The run-in show.
And I don't.
And guess who's there to provide the run-ins? I've got a great idea. I'm Jeff Jarrett. I've got a great idea. Let's do a run-in in this match. He said, hey, Tony goes, hey, Jeff, what would we do? What do you want to do on this main event? Hold on, let me think a minute. Let's do, I got it. Something different. Let's do a run-in in that match. It's different.
We'll kill your territory if you do that too often. You cannot do all the run-ins. At some point, the promotion has to step in and say, if you run out in a match, you're gone. You're gone. At some point, you have to, because people say, well, there's never going to be no winners. There's always going to be somebody running in. I'm never going to see anybody win and lose. I'm not a fan of MJF. Tried giving him a chance, and he is talented, but as a heel, he comes uppiness, always feels flat as a dime.
Well, I like him as a wrestler. You know, in the ring performance, he's as good as anybody out there today. You know, good is a relative term, but you know, it's the language and the over the top of the character that takes away from him and what he's truly capable of being.
I think his eyes are too close in his head.
No, that too.
Wrestled a Von Erich at MLW, and after a promo about getting another Von Erich in the ground. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Marshall comes out and they have a lockup around the ring. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
MLW is about to start back on BN Sports, which is a nationwide, not all cable systems have it, but a lot of them do, and they're going to be starting back with new episodes.
You kidding? Everybody has a belt. Mike Jackson's been the Alabama junior champion for 40 plus years.
I have one, but I deserve mine.
Don't forget the Dark Side of the Ring featuring the Junkyard Dog at 10 p.m. tonight. And
go ahead. Here's one for the record books. Apparently, an independent promoter was fined in New York for allowing Brody Lee Jr. to work, apparently, in the ring. I'm not sure how old he is. It looks like he's
11.
Okay. So New York is now apparently going to pass a new regulation in the legislature up there that makes promoters have to put up $20,000 for a promoter's license. $20,000. So that will effectively end most of the independent wrestling for sure. And they already fined another promoter in New York $1,000 for letting someone underage wrestle.
Yeah, I did a show up there. Took one 2001, and the athletic commission was very nice to us, but because we were doing a fundraiser show, they didn't give us any issues, and we didn't have to pay anything. But I sat down with the commissioner that came out, and it was unreal even back then what it was required to run a show in New York. And basically, if you didn't get recommended by another promoter, you would not get a promoter license. And if you didn't have references of at least 3 wrestlers in the state that were currently licensed, you couldn't get a license to wrestle up there.
Wow.
So they're not as bad as Louisiana, but they're these close.
Cindy Hardwick asked the question about the Jim Hardwick. We'll look in on him. I'll have to. I don't remember him, but that doesn't mean that
he could have wrestled under another name as well.
Yeah,
at the time. So yeah.
So I'll look in on him, Cindy, and see if I can find any information on Jim Hardwick wrestling in Georgia, because he could have wrestled with somebody else, and I will look in on it. I don't know that he may have wrestled the Mass Superstar, because there was spoilers. There was, so in the 19, and I don't know what year that was, but 1960s. They could have been a Mass Superstar. I don't know, but the Mass Superstar that was in the 77 to whatever, I guess for the time Georgia Championship Wrestling was Bill Eadie. So we'll look in on it and see. I see that he also wrestles the Hangman, so we'll look in on it and see if we can find some information about him and get back with you, Cindy, and do a little talk about it next week. I'll do some research this week. All right, Jack, any final comments before we get off of here?
Just that other reminder about the Junkyard Dog episode coming on here just in a little bit. I hope that it does right by our friend.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm going to have to watch it. Rodney?
Dutch Mantel and Booker T are ready for a match coming up very shortly. They've got in a little bit of an argument over Booker T's time at TNA. Dutch has said that Booker felt like he was too good for everything, and it could be that he just didn't want to do what Dutch told him to in the match, because I think Dutch was working at the time. Also, our good friend Kevin Patrick, the commentator for Raw, says that people just don't understand how hard it is to commentate and to be a commentator on Raw. And it's not hard for me to listen to you because I turn the sound all the way down, so I don't have a problem with your commentary at all.
Well, apparently, it ain't so hard that he can't cash those checks. So.
Apparently, he did commentary for something in Atlanta. He had some kind of commentary he was doing for something from Atlanta. And what was the other one? There was one more. Oh, there was one more issue that I was going to bring up. Oh, people want to know why Grayson Waller, I believe is his name, right, has not been wrestling on SmackDown. And I'm thinking, who wants to see him wrestle? I mean, really? I mean, he says he's injured. He said he broke his leg in the last, NXT match. But I don't think so. I just don't think that they want him to wrestle.
I don't even know who these people are. You might as well speaking.
He's doing a talk show that they put all these. They put all the like pine trees around. I mean, palm trees around, and it's like what everything else they do. They have a talk show. Everybody has one on there now. Now he's doing one. It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. Another talk show. I don't know what he said because I never turned the sound up. I didn't know he was.
Before we leave, what did Dutch and Booker T get into it about?
He said Dutch said that Booker T apparently was difficult in TNA, and he thought he was too good. He felt like Dutch felt like he thought he was too good to work there. He thought he was better than everybody.
And he told a little story about how every time Booker T wanted to do something different than what he was told, there would be that he'd go to Dutch. Dutch would send him to Bischoff, and then Bischoff would send him to what's your name that owned the company at the time, who would turn around and send him back to Dutch. And so finally, he would get the message of, I guess I'm gonna have to do what y'all want because nobody's gonna answer me.
And he wonders why Dutch has something to say about him.
Yeah, here's one. Talk shows used to be used by heels to generate heat. Now that is, yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
Booker T, so you'll know, if you were working for the territories during those days, you would have been fired on the spot and should have been fired in TNA by not doing what you were asked to do. Because what would you do if one of your wrestlers didn't do what you asked?
How much would you think wouldn't believe that probably Booker T was told that he could call his own shots?
Well, and I think Dutch also said that. Richard Hood says it there. Booker T was just trying to keep his name out there and get back to WWE. So he was not there to help TNA in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's what.
And, why get mad at Dutch? Was he upset? Was he legitimately upset?
No, he was just telling the truth. I mean, we all know Dutch, and he's pretty straightforward. He'll hurt your feelings, but he ain't lying about it.
No. He'll tell you he'll tell you the truth, whether you like it or not.
And he'll tell you up front, this is my opinion. This is from the way I saw it,
Watched an interview with Baby Doll. She said she was making less money than wrestlers. She managed and had to pay out more for. I don't doubt it.
No, I don't doubt that one bit.
I don't doubt it. She was a big portion of that, but for some reason they just didn't feel like they needed to. Really, when it came to managers in general, they didn't think they had to pay them.
Yeah. And it's funny though, I'd like to see what she was said about the Great American Bash where she worked in those main events with Cornette, because that was where Ole was telling him, I cannot believe that I worked all my life to build up this business to have a clown and which be making this kind of money on top. And of course, Cornette says, I just want to thank you, Ole, for building up the business so this clown can go out there and make that kind of money. He used other words, but I didn't put those in there.
Professional wrestling. It is one of a kind. Great characters in it. We've known a lot. Loved a lot, hated a lot, and hated them for a while and then liked them again.
Adam Cole has the flu.
Well, I'm not surprised something's wrong with Adam Cole. Surprised because he.
And it's very possible that all these Lynott fans might be happy if he might win the Money in the Bank. I wouldn't hold my breath, though.
Hey, why don't you keep them sheets of paper? These things might be worth money one day.
Kind of like what?
Finally,
what kind of like career in TNA? What?
When I'm 72 years old, and we're still doing this show, and I can hardly even walk over here to get to this thing. It'll be like I'll try to do like I do now. Get here 5 minutes before, and I finally step in here, and we've got millions of people watching. We could have sold every one of your notes at that point. Made some money.
Well, now Tony Richards is a Lynott fan. No, he's got L and A in there. So he's a Lynott fan, and he seems like he's super over to me. And so, okay, we'll see. We'll see if Lynott finally gets his chance.
Hey, I want you to know I'm looking for my next
that every time you turn around, someone's writing an article of how they're missing the boat on Lynott.
While y'all are watching LA Knight, I'm looking through cruise books.
It's Lynott. I think it's Lynott.
Lynott. So I'm not watching the current product.
He might win it this week.
All right. Thank y'all so much.
Both his fans might be happy about that.
Thank y'all so much for being a part of Pro Wrestling Inside Now. We thank you so much. Next week, we'll look at Georgia Championship Wrestling. And well, Tony Richards says.
It seems, I'm sorry. Yes, well, they put soundtracks in there.
We will look at February 1970s Georgia Championship Wrestling. Our look at the 1970s will continue, and we'll be counting them down to 1970, 71, 72, all the way until 1984 when Georgia Championship Wrestling goes bye-bye. Which we're going to do right now. We'll see you next week right here on Pro Wrestling Inside Now.